My mother is with us today. She went with us on vacation this week. One evening, as we were getting ready for dinner, she asked me what I'd been doing in the afternoon. And I said, well, I was working on my sermon. And my friend Dick Burnett would agree that without missing a beat, she said, shortening it, I hope. We were in a small group talking about what Vandelia had decided to do in terms of focusing on the neighborhood. And one of the young ladies in the group said, well, what's in it for me? And the answer at the time, as best I can remember, was something along the lines of, well, this is what we're supposed to do. That wasn't a very good answer, and I suppose it wasn't nearly good enough for her because she's not coming to church here anymore. Since then, I have come to call it the paradox of our faith. A paradox is a situation or a comment or a statement or an event that has two opposite characteristics to it that don't seem to go together. But in reality, it fits together perfectly. When Jesus had silenced the Sadducees, one of the Pharisees, a pretty good teacher of the law, came to him and said, Teacher, what is the greatest commandment? Jesus said, the greatest commandment is love the Lord your God with all of your heart and with all your mind and with all your strength. And the second one is like it. Love your neighbor as yourself. All of the law and the prophets hang on these two commandments. Paul expressed it a little bit differently in what I believe, or what I consider my favorite verse, a couple of verses in Philippians 2, 3, and 4. He said, do nothing out of selfishness or conceit, but in humility, think of others as better than yourselves. Jesus talked about it in several different ways. You remember the parable of the talents. The master gave 5 talents, 10 talents, 5 talents, and 1 talent. To the one he had given 10 talents, he came back with 10 more. To the one he'd given 5 talents, he came back with 5 more. To the one he gave 1 talent, he said, Master, I know that you are a hard master, so I put it under a rock so it would not be stolen. Here is your talent back. The master threw him out. I believe it says where there is weeping and gnashing of teeth. That's a pretty hard place, it sounds to me like. If we don't use our talent, and I think that's a pretty good pun, if we don't use our talent the way God intended to, He is going to take it away from us. We are the salt and the light of the earth. If we don't use our talent, we will lose our saltiness and we are of no value. If we don't shine our light, if we stick it under a basket, it's of no good. God has commanded us to use our talent, to shine our light. In another story, he's separating the sheep and the goats. The goats to one side, the sheep to the other. And the story goes that the sheep are those who followed the master and did what was commanded of them. And the goats were set aside. There was one story when Jesus is entering Jerusalem. He's hungry. He passes by a fig tree but there are no figs. He curses that fig tree. It wasn't doing what it was supposed to do. It withered and died. The disciples were amazed and wondered how he did that. But the point I got from the story is that the fig tree was not doing what it was supposed to be doing. It was useless to Christ, and it was condemned. I had to email this to myself. I was going to print it out and bring it on paper like I used to know how to do stuff, but my printer didn't work, so I had to email it to myself. Someone might say, but I've got to save for my 401k. I've got to keep my job. I need to do this to provide for my family. God tells us not to worry about that. He clothes the flowers of the field. We were in Mexico this last week, and there are some really beautiful flowers of the field. We don't need to worry because God is going to take care of us. The paradox is that the more we do for others, the more God does for us. The paradox, the opposite, is that when we turn our attention away from us, God takes care of us. Several years ago, 1998 or 99, I was traveling toward Levelland, and I stopped, saw a young lady on the side of the road, obviously had a flat tire, and she was standing there looking at it like it was going to change itself if she watched it long enough. I stopped to change the tire for her, and as I was changing the tire, she said, "What do you do?" I said, "I help people." She was perplexed and, "What do you mean?" I said, "God and I have a deal. I take care of everybody else and He takes care of me. The last 5 or 7 years or so that I continue to say that, I've had to add a caveat onto it that He is doing a much better job of it than I am." The point is that when we focus our attention on our neighbor, on our brothers and sisters, and don't worry about what we are getting out of it, God is going to provide for us. I know a fellow that I'll say that he's in sales, and he is very faithful. He has done things for God and contributed and supported the church and is very faithful in what he does. And some time ago, a new client was just poof, he shows up. In this town, I think the client is probably one of the biggest individuals, companies in his industry sector. How did my friend come across this client? God referred him through another person. He wasn't looking for more business. He wasn't interested in what was in it for him. He takes care of those around him. And God saw fit to benefit him. We don't need to worry about what is in it for us, because God will take care of us. when we take care of those around us, just as he commanded, to love our neighbor as we love ourselves.